It's Matt Stafford or a rookie for me when it comes to the Browns quarterback pursuits. I'll explain coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast, and proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. As I said in the intro, Matt Stafford will be the first name that I reveal on my quarterback big board. Along those lines, it's either Stafford or a rookie for me over some of these other veteran options that are out there. And despite what some people may be writing, J.K. Dobbins is not a good free agent fit for the Browns. I do want to thank you for being an everydayer at the Locked On Browns podcast, and of course for making us your first listen every single day. Let's not waste any time. I'll get right into it. And as I said to start the show, Matthew Stafford, if he's actually somebody that comes available, and I know there was a conversation from Adam Schefter this week about, what this kind of looks like and how he's looking for a new contract from the Rams. And if that doesn't happen, then they would obviously look to potentially trade him somewhere. What he would cost, what you'd have to give to get him, that all remains to be seen if it even comes to that. But as I survey this landscape of quarterback options, and I promised you that I would start going through here and leading up to the combine, through the combine, after the combine, sort of go through a big board here of my top options when it comes to the Browns quarterback decision and who they should pursue. And I'm starting you off hot out of the gate with number one being Matthew Stafford. As I think through the veteran options that are out there, he is the one that stands out in my mind as the most complete, the most ready to win now. And you kind of know what you're getting. Even at the age of 37, like he is, you still feel like it's a player who is generally playing at a high level and is going to bring something to the table that this fan base and this team can be excited about to potentially be in the playoffs. And he serves both purposes on top of that. He can be a bridge option that legitimately can still win you games and keep you competitive, but he also, and get you to the playoffs even, but he also can serve in that role of, hey, you're getting older, you're not going to play forever, let's bring you in and also draft a guy and have you nurture that next guy, that future potential franchise quarterback that we sort of have on our radar or that we're going to draft this year and that we're really excited about. So as you think about like what iterations that quarterback room looks like, Matthew Stafford can fit in a multitude of roles for this team at the quarterback position. And so that's another thing that makes him very intriguing. I think through the quarterbacks that are in the draft. And here's where this all kind of stems from for me as well. Because as we've had these conversations about different quarterback options, the veteran options, the rookie options, all these different things, it just seems like nobody likes any of them. And that's not a blanket statement for all fans. You might be somebody who likes one of these rookies. You might be somebody who likes one of the veterans. But it just seems like there's no consensus on this. And I know that's going to be hard to do among a fan base anyway. But you throw out some of these veteran names. Sam Darnold, Kirk Cousins, maybe Daniel Jones as a reclamation project. I'm trying to think of some other ones that have come up recently, but those are the ones that kind of stand out in my mind as the most notable. Aaron Rodgers, for example. And maybe Aaron Rodgers would be high for people because they think he can still play football at a high level. I just don't want Aaron Rodgers, as I've talked about on the show, because the added drama effect that he brings, the Browns don't need that. The Browns do not need that on this team, in this locker room, with this roster. They've dealt with enough drama at the quarterback position. They don't need to invite more willingly to have to deal with the McAfee show pop-ins and the weekly stops on there and just everything else, the political beliefs that, he's within his right to share those. That's fine. But we don't need that every week with this team. It's just another distraction. So I'm staying away from him, but I made that very clear. But other than that, Justin Fields, that's a name that's come up. All these names, it's like, okay. And I get it. Like if you're eventually subscribing to one of those guys, it's because you realize that there's not a lot of options out there. And that's always the case, right? Like the free agent market is never going to present a lot of good opportunities to land quarterbacks that are going to play at a high level for you, or ones that you can trade for. Because if they're available via trade, there's usually something wrong, i.e. the Deshaun Watson situation that hasn't worked out quite that well. So at this point, like, I've been okay with the Kirk Cousins idea because you're probably going to get him for like the vet minimum. And at that point, for just over $1 million, why not give it a shot with a guy who's played with Kevin Stefanski before? So, but again, that's me sort of settling on the idea that, like, yeah, it's worth a shot, but I don't necessarily think he's going to be great. When I think about a guy that could still play at a high level, could still keep your team competitive and be good, is Matt Stafford. Like, of the veteran options, he makes the most sense. He is the guy that you are going to be able to buy into the most. Again, you look at his numbers from last year. The injuries are maybe the one thing that feel like a concern. Like, he has been injured more of late the last couple of years than he used to be, but he still threw for 3,700 yards, had 20 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, a 65 completion percentage. Like, he's still playing the game at a high level. He's not going to create a lot of dumb turnovers. He's not going to make those mistakes. The football IQ is there. It's the polar opposite of what you had at the position last year. So for me, Matt Stafford comes into the top of the list. And I mentioned the veteran guys, even the rookie guys who I have been talking more and more about. And I admittedly, I've come around more and more on the idea of, okay, you can draft 1 or 2 if you really believe in it. And it's felt like that's been Shedeur Sanders for the Browns. Eerily, because I think there's so much smoke that it seems a little too good to be true. But if they, I like Shedeur Sanders. I've come around on the idea of Shedeur Sanders as an NFL player and prospect. But if it's Shedeur Sanders, like, there still are some questions. There's still the arm strength being a thing. There's still, the fact that as you compare these guys to last year's class, they would be like the 7th and 8th best quarterbacks in last year's class. So there are still some concerns there that I have about his transition to the NFL. And I think Cam Ward's the better prospect of the two, but I have concerns about Cam Ward and the recklessness he plays with, his inability to protect the football. Those are concerns that I have with him. So there's no perfect copy-paste answer this year in the draft or on the veteran market. And again, that's kind of par for the course when you're a team that needy or desperate for a quarterback. But as I think about this, Matt Stafford makes sense from the vet. If you're comparing him to the veterans, he makes sense if you're comparing him to the rookies. He's the most complete product. Yes, a little longer in the tooth and getting up there in age, but he is without question the most complete product that will be available to you potentially this offseason. Now, some might bring up Trevor Lawrence. I talked about that last week. That now seems like it's pie in the sky. He was on Kay Adams' show and said, yeah, I have a no trade clause, so I'm not going anywhere. That's not happening. I'm happy in Jacksonville. So I've ruled that out. Obviously, if he's back on the table, I consider that probably over some of these rookies as well. But for the most part, like, Stafford's it for me. Stafford is the guy that if he is actually available, the Browns got to pick up the phone. Andrew Berry's got to pick up the phone and see if they can get him, because he can play the roles that you need, whether it's just a bridge option to keep you competitive or being that mentor sort of role for a guy while starting and then transitioning to a rookie. He can bridge the gap perfectly for this team. And he's still playing at a high enough level that I feel confident with him as the quarterback for this team moving forward. So that's the top guy on my board. We'll start to reveal these guys kind of day by day here, every other day here. We'll figure it out. But along those lines, after Matt Stafford, I rattled off a bunch of the veteran options that are available outside of Stafford. And aside from Stafford, after him, it's the rookies for me in terms of who I would kind of want next. And there's a big, big reason why. I'll explain coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you're going to get any money back. And then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get a real-time update on the progress that's being made so you can focus on your day today. An expert who will find every deduction possible and file every form that you need, every investment, everything at 100% accuracy. All so you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now that is taxes. Get an expert now at TurboTax, only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at turbotax.com/guarantees. All right, so as I explained, if it's not Matt Stafford, the next options that I want, probably the next three options that I want, and this is kind of going to be a giveaway of my big board, but I won't give you the order then here. I'll keep that a secret, I guess. But the next options for me are any of these top three rookies: Jackson Dart, Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, in no particular order. And there's a reason for that, because as I explained, it's slim pickings on the veteran market, whether that's via trade, whether that's via free agency, just signing a guy. It's slim pickings. So you're scraping the bottom of the barrel. You're not going to have the best options available to you. And as I think about like the guys that are out there, Justin Fields, as I said, Sam Darnold, as I said, all these guys come with this idea of what they already are. We have seen Sam Darnold play at a high level throughout portions of last season and then turn back into a pumpkin at the most important time of the year. The last two games of the regular season, the last game of the regular season, and then in the postseason, he reverted back to being the Sam Darnold that we all kind of thought he was. Justin Fields, guy who he's had a couple different opportunities now. I like Justin Fields. I like Justin Fields coming out of college. If you know me, being an Ohio State fan, obviously the connection there is part of that. But, with Justin Fields, like, we've seen the limitations at this point. Like, at some point, you just have to accept that he's kind of shown every ounce of his game, and there's not like another level for him to go to. I think he just is what he is. And so as much as I like him, I don't know that he's like putting you over the top. There's like some unknown thing that we haven't found out about him at this point. I think we've seen it. All these guys are similar, like Daniel Jones. Maybe he's next year's Sam Darnold, where a coach bets on him, gets the most out of him, revives his career, gets him a big payday. But do I think Daniel Jones is all of a sudden going to come out and like lead a franchise to the Super Bowl and be that franchise quarterback that some team is looking for? No, I don't. I'm not there with it. I think most people probably aren't there with it. Daniel Jones is another guy who at this point just kind of is who he is. And I think that's the case with a lot of these veteran options. Same thing with Kirk Cousins. Even though I have said, admittedly, I'm open to signing Kirk Cousins for the vet minimum and seeing what he can do teaming up with Kevin Stefanski again. I don't know that like I'm going to get Kirk Cousins from a couple of years ago. He's probably going to be Kirk Cousins at the age of 38 or whatever the hell age he is at this point. So I'm just not really sold on any of those guys. And because of that, like the rookies after Matt Stafford pose the best options next for me. And the reason is, with a rookie, there's always some untapped potential. I've been saying it over and over again. You have to leave room for the idea that coaching will pull some more out of a guy, or that you have to leave room for coaching to be able to help these guys develop and change and evolve as they get to the NFL level. And so that's all part of the equation here as well. There's room for somebody like Shedeur Sanders to get to the NFL and improve. There's room for Cam Ward, even though it's rare, to get to the NFL, and maybe he can be like Josh Allen in the way that he somehow gets to a point where he stops with the recklessness. Like he talks himself out of it, and he learns good habits to avoid the mistakes that cost his team's games in college, and that people are fearful are going to cost his team's game in the NFL. We'll see. But there's always room for that development. And frankly, like a rookie always comes with just more hope. But as I think about like how I rank these guys and where I sort of put them if I'm lining them all up together, most of these rookie options come with like more upside, more potential, more unknowns than any of the veteran options that I've rattled off, and any of the ones that you might be thinking through that I haven't named. So name your veteran option that's out there. Again, it's slim pickings. It's not a great field of players to be choosing from. And so I think the rookies offer more, even with the doubts that we have about them, even with the questions about Cam Ward and his recklessness, even with the questions about Shedeur Sanders and, his arm strength, even with the questions about, Jackson Dart and the offense he's coming from with Lane Kiffin's system that was very half of the field and didn't necessarily make him go through a lot of progressions. And he struggled from the pocket consistently at times. Like there's some athleticism there. Like I've talked about Jackson Dart. I like Jackson Dart. He is my QB3 in this class, and he'd be up there in this conversation because I just think there's more to gain with these guys. There's more potential with these guys than any of those veteran options. So as I'm thinking through just what my big board looks like and where my head is at in this conversation just in general, it does feel like the most advantageous situation to either get Matt Stafford and put yourself in a situation where you have a veteran that you can trust who's going to allow you to still be competitive and know that you still have to fill that void. Or, okay, if it's not him, like, would you rather have a rookie that you can sell to the fan base and that could improve to a point where you find your franchise quarterback and you feel pretty good about that? Or would you rather have a veteran, a retread, some guy that we already kind of know the story on, and that might not really change at the NFL like in years to come because the book's kind of out, the jury's kind of out on a lot of these guys? I'll take my chances with the rookie. And that's honestly, like, if you're thinking about from the perspective of like what fans are going to get excited about, I think it's a lot easier to sell the fan base on a rookie than a lot of these veteran options, because I just told you first segment, like every time you bring up these veteran guys, it's the same response from fans. It's like, well, I don't know how I feel about that guy. And maybe there's one guy that fans like, or maybe there's one guy that you like that you're like, I could get behind that and give it a try. But again, you're talking yourself into it because you're like, well, somebody has to start a quarterback, right? And that's the big question. It's like, I don't know what everybody wants. I don't know what people want. Because like you bring up these veteran options, it's like, well, somebody's got to start. So if maybe it's the rookie for you, and that's why you feel that way, and you're like, well, I don't want the veterans because I want the rookie. But maybe they don't want a rookie to start immediately, and they want a veteran to sort of bridge the gap. You got to bring in somebody then. And so if you're thinking about like what's going to get people excited, what has the most potential and upside, the higher ceiling of these guys, is it a Justin Fields that we kind of feel like we know already, or is it a Shedeur Sanders who, yeah, there's some questions, but you can never account for every little thing. You can never account for anybody's ability to adjust at the next level. And like what's in here sometimes ends up mattering for a guy more than others. Or sometimes what's in here helps the guy that you have questions about actually be able to translate at the next level. So that's the big thing for me. The rookies make the most sense aside from the three rookies in particular. Jackson Dart, Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders. You can make a case for some others. Like I'm intrigued by Will Howard. I don't know if I'm taking him high enough. Like I'd probably take some veteran options over Will Howard at least to start, because Will Howard's very much going to be a developmental project. But like those three guys are next in line for me after Stafford in terms of like the guys that make the most sense, the guys that you can sell to a fan base, the guys that get you the most excited, the guys that bring the most to the table skill set wise. I'll take the skill set of those guys over the skill set of some of these vets that we're talking about as, potential fill-in guys, and that we sort of have seen play in this league already, and we know what their limitations are, what their problems are, and what their warts are. I'll take a rookie that I can sort of still find those things out, but there's always the chance that they actually pan out at the NFL level. So that's where I'm kind of at with it. Not to spoil my big board entirely, but it's Matt Stafford, some iteration of those rookies, which we'll reveal as time goes on here, and then we'll kind of go on down the list from there as the weeks kind of progress. But we'll flip the page here a little bit, because staying on the offensive side of the ball, we've talked a lot about quarterbacks. Another need the Browns have, though, is running back. There's been some things written about the Browns maybe pursuing or being a good fit for J.K. Dobbins. As much as I'm an Ohio State guy, I disagree. I'll explain why coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss on the opening tip and you want to bet on the fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. How about that? With the NFL season behind us, I'm gonna be betting a lot of Cleveland Cavaliers basketball with FanDuel, because they're a really good team. They got a tough stretch of the schedule coming up, but it's going to test them for the playoffs. And frankly, I think they got a shot to win it all. If you don't, you're a hater. But that might be an opportunity for you to get in as well. Bet a futures bet on them pulling out a Larry O'Brien trophy. And the app is easy to use. And when you win, you can get paid instantly by depositing your money straight from the app into your account. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, so ESPN did a piece this week on the top 50 free agents and the best fit for said free agents. And the Browns were listed for one player in particular. And I want to say, I'll say it from the beginning. The connection makes sense from the standpoint of I understand what they were doing with this piece, with this practice that they were doing and trying to sort of assign certain guys to certain teams because running back is a need for the Browns. But they linked the Browns to J.K. Dobbins. Here's the explanation. How about Dobbins signing with the Browns to replace Nick Chubb as Cleveland's new lead runner? The offense fits his traits well with both gap and zone schemes, and Dobbins looked explosive on tape throughout last season. Though he missed 4 games because of a knee sprain, he finished 2024 907 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns. Okay, so the explanation makes sense. The connection makes sense because it's a need for the Browns. They do need to find a running back to sort of lead the charge in the backfield. Even though I maintain I think Nick Chubb will be signing back with the Browns this offseason. He talked about that, saying he wants to come back. So I think they're going to make that happen. But you can't rely on Nick Chubb at this point to be your lead back and solely your lead back. You need some options. You need somebody to sort of be the lead guy, and Nick Chubb can be a supporting piece, I think, in that group. As unfortunate as that is for me to say, I think it's true. So knowing that, I get where they're going with J.K. Dobbins makes a lot of sense. And I'm intrigued by J.K. Dobbins' upside coming back from the injuries he has, playing at a high level this past year, comeback player, all those things. He was great, and I love J.K. Dobbins. I loved him coming out of college. I thought he was going to be great at the next level. And unfortunately, injuries have kind of stalemated his career to an extent. And that was the case this year where he missed the 4 games, as they alluded to. That's my biggest gripe is as to why he's not a good fit. Because they are right. The system fits, gap and zone scheme runs. Kevin Stefanski loves to have a good, solid, reliable running back to lead his group. You know, we've seen that in the past work so well for his offense. And we know they're going back to Kevin Stefanski's system. So I'm intrigued by all those things. But the injury part of this is the biggest thing for me. I can't count on him to stay healthy. And if they're really bringing back Nick Chubb too, how can I have a backfield that features Nick Chubb dealing with injuries now regularly, J.K. Dobbins dealing with injuries regularly, and then Jerome Ford? Like that doesn't really accomplish what you're looking for. And the other part of this is because this running back class coming out to the NFL is so damn good and so deep and stacked, I'd rather take my chances with one of those guys and know that it's a fresh start, less wear on the tires, somebody who's coming in with a fresh perspective, can be coached up to be even better. And there's some really good talented guys, up and down this class that I think makes sense for the Browns. And we can talk more in depth about those specifically. But I've even admitted not J.K. Dobbins. I'm thinking of another Ohio State running back, Quinshon Judkins. I think he's a perfect fit for the Browns. Reminds me of Kareem Hunt, can be your lead back, uber talented, can come in and grasp this thing pretty quickly and be a really good player. I am intrigued so much by somebody like him being added to this roster and being a lead back candidate for the Browns. But even if it's not him, I mean, because of how deep this class is, it makes more sense for me to draft a guy that has some high potential and could potentially be the next big thing for you, the next Nick Chubb for you, that doesn't have so much wear and tear and the injury, the proneness to injuries. That's way more intriguing to me. A young player that is just getting into the league and can still break out and reach that potential over somebody like J.K. Dobbins that, you're walking on eggshells hoping he stays healthy all season. And there's a number of options. I don't think they're going to take Ashton Jeanty. Honestly, the thing that hurts Ashton Jeanty in this class is that there's so many other good running backs down the list that you almost don't want to take him because you can pass and wait and get somebody else later that's going to be equally, I think, as talented. Caleb Johnson from Iowa is a guy that I'm really excited about. Travion Henderson, sort of the opposite of Quinshon Judkins in terms of their styles, but I really like him. Dylan Sampson is a name that I know has popped up lately that I'm intrigued by. Trevor Etienne, even later in the draft, could be something that you maybe find there. So again, there's so many names up and down this list. The list goes on and on that I'm not even thinking the Browns should be exploring, options in free agency. I think running back just becomes something that you table completely until the draft. You basically say, we'll address other needs in free agency. Running back is one that we're just going to wait till the draft to address, aside from signing Nick Chubb. I'll clarify. If they bring back Nick Chubb, they get a team-friendly deal, hometown discount style, fine. But aside from that, I don't think you're looking for your home run hitter, your lead back necessarily in free agency. I think you save that position for the draft because you're going to be able to get one of value in a later round, like the third round, maybe even the fourth round, if you wait that long. Now, they could just take one in the second round too. Who knows? But that's where I'm at with it. So, again, I get the connection to J.K. Dobbins. I get why it would be a fit. And I did love J.K. Dobbins coming out of college. You'll never upset me if you connect the Browns to an Ohio State player, because I love my Ohio State players. I'd love to see him play right here in Cleveland. I just don't know if it makes sense because there's so many options out there that are just getting into the NFL with a lot more higher ceilings and potential. It's the same thing, like I said, with the quarterbacks, man. There's just so much more untapped ability with these guys and less wear and tear. You don't have to worry about the injuries with some of these guys yet, that I'd rather take my chances with that and develop somebody to be your lead back than go get J.K. Dobbins, maybe overpay for him, whatever you're going to have to pay. And then, every week be worried that he might not be able to play, on top of the fact, if you add Nick Chubb back into the mix too, now you just got this banged up backfield of guys that are dealing with injuries, it seems like more and more. So keep me away from that. I get it. I don't love it. I don't think it's as good of a fit as ESPN does. And, we'll talk through, obviously coming up in future weeks, what options do make the most sense, including those rookie guys, or mostly highlighting those rookie guys that I talked about here today. Another episode down with you, Dog Pound. I want to thank you for joining me as always to talk about your favorite football team. Less than a week out from the Combine, so things are going to get hot and heavy and spicier over the course of the next week. Hope you continue to make us your first listen every single day. For your second listen, go check out the new Locked On NFL show, or if you want to keep it local, you can check out Locked On Cavs or Locked On Guardians. Thanks for being an everydayer at the Locked On Podcast Network. I will talk to you again real soon, Cleveland. Peace.